I brought out a stanchion, which has given it a little bit of respect, the piece a little bit of respect. People see this velvet rope and they're like, oh, this is a thing I need to be careful around. So, and it's right by kind of the elevator area, so it gets lots of traffic and everything. High visibility, but we still have people who break through the velvet and they try and write on it and touch it, you know, like, how does this work? And we're just like, stop it! So, yeah, we're really proud of this piece, and I'm glad we brought a velvet rope out as our high security measure.
So, like I mentioned in the Texas Fashion Collection, they do have to partner on anything that they do an exhibition for. This image is from North Park Mall. As the Texas Fashion Collection has an incredibly small staff, it relies on a network of area professionals to assist with projects. For example, for exhibitions, they rely on textile conservators, fashion merchandisers, graphic designers for label and exhibition graphics, photographers, and colleagues at hosting institutions to assist with exhibition layout and production, press, security, and facilities monitoring. For example, partners for the exhibition shown here arranged for the skylights to be covered so the space would have more appropriate light levels. They constructed and installed platforms and provided funds to hire many contract staff who helped install the shuttle. They also had a really beneficial partnership, and this was a great win-win, for this intro panel design for Faux Real. Let's see, May. This is still on exhibition. If you visit Dallas, I highly recommend that you go to North Park Mall because it has sculpture, and then also to see this installation. Partnerships often result in connections between our partners. For example, a local graphic designer recently offered to do some pro bono projects for the Texas Fashion Collection. I think she just wanted a creative project outside her work, regular job, day job. And she was then hired then to create an exhibition intro panel, and because the hosting institution, North Park Mall, was so pleased with her work, she's now being engaged as a freelance designer throughout their institution as well. There we go.
So other considerations regarding exhibition. At DPL, we have a contract and agreement that shows that each show lasts 2 months, and then we have a week in between for install and de-installation. We have an exhibition committee who gets together from the, we have an exhibition committee made up from our staff members who get together roughly every quarter to decide who they would like to have exhibit and solidify the schedule and everything. And this committee is in charge of our large gallery space, our showcase spaces, and the new exhibition or community gallery that I mentioned earlier. And so they are in charge of coordinating with the artist, working with marketing, logistics, getting large pieces into our space by using the freight elevator. So, and to do all that, we have to partner or have a good relationship with other departments in the library, so our marketing, our delivery services, that kind of thing. And they run these spaces in addition to their other responsibilities at the library. So they are library associates by title, so they work the reference desk and they help with collection development. They're working on the exhibitions committee, they're working on other committees outside of the division, outside of the fine arts floor. So it's a lot to handle, and it's taken, what, 3.5 years now to like really get it to a place where it's a well-oiled machine, because if we aren't organized and if we don't have it together, it's a mess, speaking from experience.
So this is an example of a one-night exhibit that we put together. It was, and I'll tell you more about it in just a minute. It's from Hyde Park to Fair Park. And we had quite a rather large empty space that we felt like we needed to fill, and this was just a one-night thing. And so we found some things that, I believe this is Rusk, and then we had some stuff from Fannin and glasses and guns and stuff like that. But sometimes we just have to do a pop-up exhibit at the last minute, and that can be kind of daunting. For the record, my exhibits are pretty cool, but I feel like you can learn more from my mistakes. So I had this idea of doing trains that went through the entire library, and so I went to these train organizations, and I found out that it was going to be more serious than I thought. They're very protective of their little babies, and they don't want anybody touching them, so they want it guarded and they want it protected, which isn't feasible when the library's open 7 days a week, 9 to 5, sometimes till 8. And so in the meantime, I was contacting everybody that had trains, which was Ronald McDonald House. This ended up turning into a really cool project because we started doing the pull tabs. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ronald McDonald pull tabs that they do at Christmas time. You just take them and you put them in a bucket and then you donate them. They get the majority of the aluminum, I believe, is concentrated in that one area, so they collect the tabs to collect money to help fund the Ronald McDonald House. So that turned out to be successful, but when the lady came in, she had 2 bags, and I thought, well, let me get you a cart so we can pull that stuff up here. And she goes, oh no, this is it. So I had 8 cases with like 5 of these itty-bitty trains, that big. So I ended up improvising and raiding the children's floor and taking their trains and making an exhibit out of it with like railroad books and stuff like that. So sometimes you just have to think on your feet a little bit. And this ended up being better than I thought. I wish I had pictures to show you. And these are actually, they were in the exhibit.
So to add on to Penny's learn from your mistakes, this top picture is a full-length picture of our showcase area, again 30 feet wide, 7 feet deep, and what we have there now is great. Like, it fills the space, we have different levels, but we were given the name of an artist. Our admin actually connected us with an artist and was saying, oh, Harlan Butt, he's a UNT professor, retired, he's great, he lives in Denton, and, let's showcase his stuff. And I said, okay, yeah. So we got in contact with Harlan, and he was telling us about his pieces, which are these little, like, vase-looking things, and they're about that big. They're really not big at all. And we were trying to work with him, do you want to come out and see the space, to see what you have to work with? No, I'm good. Do you have any posters or any imagery of you working on these? No. We're like, okay. So it comes to install time, and he has like 5 of those little vases on this long table, because we had no idea really what to expect. And so that was all that was in there, was a table with these tiny, tiny little things. And it really, it looked really empty. It looked really not good. So we're really trying to inspire our artists to come and look at the space, because seeing it on paper is one thing, but actually being in it is another. And I think if he had done that, he would have said, oh, I need to add more to this exhibition.
So I just wanted to touch on a little bit of a different non-traditional exhibit space, a historic building. So any historic building has its own unique challenges, and our building, the Hall of State, was built in 1936 for the Texas Centennial as a celebration of Texas. So for us, one of the challenges is creating exhibits in a space that is itself an art piece. Certainly it's one of the great things about our building. People come from all over to see the murals and the statues, but it comes with a certain level of difficulty when mounting exhibits. So you can see in the image on the left our Great Hall in its natural state. What you can't quite see in that picture is that each of the sidewalls is covered by a 30 by 80 foot mural. But in the right 3 images there, you see it built up for some of our state fair exhibits. So everything has to be constructed from scratch for each exhibit. The walls, the lighting, the glass with cases if they're oversized. And the good thing about this is we do have a great deal of flexibility and freedom when it comes to designing, but it's a little bit more effort than a traditional gallery or museum space. And this is just another one of our spaces, our East Texas room. We have one room themed after each of the 4 regions of Texas, and they all incorporate some of the elements of that region. So in this one, it's, let's see, the walls are wood from East Texas gum trees. So again, we can't put anything directly on the walls. And you see it built for a few different exhibits there with the walls built up. And in the lower, the black and white photo, that's another 1936 picture of them constructing exhibits for the Centennial. Now one other, kind of on the other side, is sometimes the building can lend itself like a natural tie-in for exhibits. So the lower right-hand photo there, we have a statue of James Fannin, and then for it was Texas Independence Day, we did a little pop-up with Fannin's watch and a few other artifacts from Goliad. And so there can be some natural tie-ins, but sometimes you have to get a little creative when working with the space.
So this is another example of an exhibit-inspiring program. This is Laura Roosevelt. She's the great-granddaughter of FDR and his wife, and she is an avid artist. And so she got together with our board, and they decided to do a gallery space. And so this is kind of what our techs have to go through when they're building. This is a pretty good example right here on the left. This is a short-lived project. It's about 3 weeks. And it also took them about 3 weeks to build it. So it's very time consuming, but our department is always very great. We always succeed, and it's always got a great ending to it. Let's see, I think. All right, and this is what our Hall of State is generally used for. We do a lot of weddings. We do a lot of fashion shows, we do parties, we do corporate events and stuff like that, and so that's kind of our bread and butter. And this on the right is was last year's state of the Fair State exhibit that we had. As you can see, this is a cobra that belonged to Carol Shelby. We had to build a glass around it. Everything that we have to build something around it to protect it. These cases are original with the building. They're 1936 cases. And this is one of our pride and joy collections. This is a flight attendant outfit from Braniff.
And just to go back to this Art 29 project, creating exhibition spaces in all of our locations, the buildings themselves are a big challenge, and it's been, like I said, a big project, and I've learned a lot from it so far. So by the end of this, I should be an expert installer and hardware buyer for exhibition spaces. So another barrier that we have, or another challenge that we have being a public library with exhibition spaces, is that sometimes we have to create some guidelines with what we can allow the artist to do and what we can't. So when there's audio components to an exhibition, we have to keep it at a minimum. We have to make sure that it doesn't, the sound doesn't carry outside of the gallery onto the floor space. This one, Selfie Nation, is up right now at the Dallas Public Library, and he brought in a band for his opening reception, unbeknownst to us. We see them coming off with the elevator with instruments with them, and we're like, okay, what? And then we see them wheeling out these giant amplifiers, and we were like, oh no. And sure enough, they plugged that in, and it was like, wow. So we have to really be careful with the liberties that we give artists, and it can be a difficult conversation because a lot of times it doesn't match with their expectations or their vision for their exhibition or their space. And it's not just limited to audio. We've also had structures built within our gallery. We had an exhibition one time that with a giant yurt in the center of the gallery, and we were like, okay. And at that point, it was just frames, and we were like, this is great, okay, cool. Well, then they threw some fabric over it on it, you know, and it became like this tent, and I was like, oh no. Because one thing you don't want in a public library is like a secret space for people. It was really challenging because we have to check inside, like when we roam the floor and everything, or just like, is anybody in here? And you can't sleep in here, man, come on. So that's just one of the other challenges we have, but we try to roll with it. We try to go do what we can so that the artist is pleased with their exhibition in our spaces.
So this is an example that Isabel sent from her experience at New York Public Library. Most of her exhibitions, like I mentioned, she had art, it ran like a professional museum. It really had the staff, it had the exhibition staff, the registrarial staff, and she also, though, worked within her library to present a children's book illustrators and authors exhibit within the Children's Public Library area. So the 42nd Street branch used to only be research collections, and then when they redid some of the things at New York Public, they created a public children's circulating collection in the bottom floor and moved Winnie the Pooh there, in case you don't know that. So she, as the Director of Collection Management, was originally asked to speak as part of this panel, but her main contribution here is her experience working in this unconventional exhibition that she managed that took place in the Children's Center. And for this exhibition, local children's book illustrators were invited to exhibit their work with certain conditions. In this case, there would be no security aside from library staff, but their main job is not to watch the art. There would be no special lighting, and these were all works on paper. So only one artist withdrew his light-sensitive watercolor illustration from the exhibition after being informed of the light conditions. But the exhibition was also on view for 6 months, and most works on paper are supposed to be on view for 3 months, and then rest for 3 months or 3 years, something like that. They have a standard, so this was, all the rules were broken, but it was still a very successful exhibition. In fact, I found these images online. It's on the record of their exhibition history. And the research, one thing that I did want to mention also about New York Public Library and what's in a name. So New York Public Library is a public library, but it also has research collections. And she also worked at the Morgan Library and Museum, which was formerly called the Pierpont Morgan Library. But when they added on to their building, they wanted to be viewed more as a museum than a library. They don't have circulating collections. And so they changed their name to the Morgan Library and Museum from the Pierpont Morgan Library. Their original emphasis was on the research library until the Renzo Piano entrance was built, and then it reopened with a new name and a new emphasis. So there is a lot in a name. And one thing I just wanted to mention about the DMA Exhibition Schedule and the things that we put up in the library. Our exhibition schedules at the museum are planned years in advance, and then they change like 100 times in the time between when the first idea comes about until it actually goes on the wall. So we're constantly juggling ideas, but when we know something is going to go up in the galleries, we start thinking in the library and archives, well, what do we have in our collection that we could possibly display, either within the exhibition, if it's not too late to add something, or in our library cases. And so, for example, for a recent exhibition, Cult of the Machine, Precisionism and American Art, the library displayed issues of Fortune magazine from December of 1940, where one of the artists from our collection, Charles Sheeler, had a spread of illustrations that were images of his paintings that he did that were commissioned for that issue of the magazines.
How are we doing on time?
Yeah, thank you.
So again, from the Texas Fashion Collection, since it doesn't have its own dedicated space, it actively cultivates partnerships with other cultural institutions, from art museums to shopping centers, and they consider any partner that can provide support through appropriate space and support with staffing and funding. Remember, their budget's $15,000 a year. They couldn't do all these exhibitions for $1,500 or $1,550,000 a year. While many of the TFC partners have been more traditional, for example, this well-regarded exhibition featuring, as I mentioned before, Cristobal Balenciaga, hosted by the Meadows Museum. Oh, excuse me, that's a different Balenciaga exhibition. This one was hosted by the Meadows Museum at SMU in Dallas. Great partnerships have been forged with less traditional institutions. So as I mentioned before, this is North Park Mall. Those are real Andy Warhol prints on the wall, if you're not familiar with North Park. The TFC has partnered with North Park Center in Dallas for the past 3 years to mount an annual fashion exhibition. North Park is a high-end shopping center with a fine art collection, and they see over 29 million visitors a year. We've mentioned a lot of numbers. We'll talk about that at the end. The space is open to the public 72 hours a week for free, which translates to incredible accessibility for TFC's holdings. Additionally, North Park funds these exhibitions, which allows for strategic acquisitions for the exhibition, the ability to hire contractors for the projects, and critical income for supporting other TFC needs, like acid-free boxes and insurance premiums and that type of thing. And while North Park's very broad audience, these exhibitions tend to be organized thematically rather than focusing on a single designer or fashion-specific topic, which may be inaccessible to people, so thinking of your audience. They feature both contemporary and historic designs, so people will see garments that look familiar and provide a point of access for more historical content. They speak to a current fashion trend. This year's exhibition features many animal prints, which are used in ensembles in almost every store in North Park. And they relate to current social issues, in this case, fashion's relationship with materials like fur and leather and the environmental impact of the fashion industry. And I can tell you, I went shopping one day at North Park, didn't know this was up, and was just completely amazed when I went down the hallway, and then I ended up at the Faux Real panel and saw one of our speakers' names on the panel. It's very cool, and it's a very good exhibition.
So for us, our physical location in Fair Park means that we're often involved in whatever's going on inside the park. This makes us a natural partner with the State Fair of Texas and gives us a wonderful opportunity to reach a large and more broad audience than we do on a daily basis. Some years, the fair will request a specific topic or theme for the big exhibit. Other years, the DHS can present ideas on what topics to feature. These are just a few images from past year's exhibits. Although we're open year-round to the public, and we always have smaller exhibits throughout the year, some visitors only know us by our annual 3-week State Fair exhibit. We've definitely never had a line outside our door like that for any of our non-State Fair exhibits, but in recent years we've really taken advantage of this to do smaller exhibits from our own collection in other spaces throughout the building, so we can reach a little bit of a larger audience for those 3 weeks.
The images you see here, this is the library case in the Mayer Library, and the image on the right is Stephen Antinaco's Hanging Neon. We acquired this object at the DMA, as you can see from the accession number 2015, and the images in the case are primarily from a gift of vertical file material given by the artist studio to the Mayer Library at the time of the acquisition. And we were going through the materials and found them just so fascinating that we decided to mount an exhibition at the time when this piece first went on view. It was extremely successful and has had far-reaching benefits for our library as well as this is an exhibition that was done in the concourse. And speaking of numbers, everyone in the museum saw this exhibition because it was mounted in the main concourse of the museum. It started out as a very small idea. Oh, we are celebrating 25 years in the Arts District. What can the archives do to help us with that celebration? And I said, well, and at the time we did not have our professional archivist on staff. We were in the process of hiring and interviewing, but we did not have anybody hired. So I started pulling materials and pulling images, and again, this is one of many duties, and of course got completely engrossed in the idea and couldn't, even begin to think of how to narrow things down. So when I started to work with the exhibition designer, because it was going in the main space, they said, well, okay, what do you have for us? And I said, well, what would you like? I have everything. Well, what is everything? Well, I have photographs, I have models, I want to use work from the collection. We have Edward Larrabee Barnes drawings in the art collection. And it went from being a few things in cases in the concourse to an exhibition that originally had no budget, which turned into a $10,000 project. And the reason was because of all of this wall text. It all became, I don't even know what it's called, but when they put the text up on the wall directly, it's not a panel on the wall. And all of the icons were designed for the different buildings in the Arts District. The images were created and put on the walls instead of being on the card and then put on the wall. So it went from being kind of a small in-house idea to quite a splash. And the other thing to keep in mind on that is media. If you have media in an exhibition, we had several clips from when the Arts District first opened, newsreels, interviews with the director, interviews with curators, installation of the objects in the building, because our building moved downtown and has helped establish the Arts District. Moved from Fair Park, and before that moved from Dallas Public Library. So we had lots of archival footage. We really wanted to show it, but we didn't tell the person buying the monitor. They said, well, we gotta get the best monitor. Of course, it's in the concourse. Well, the monitor didn't fit the resolution of the video. So there were image problems with the media. It was shown, but not to the way we wanted it displayed.
The DMA's collection was actually started at the Dallas Public Library, so you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Partnerships. This is by far my favorite part of my job. I love meeting people. I love partnering with new institutions, seeing what we can work out, what kind of programs or service we can offer. So the first one, I partnered with the Stew Pot. Thank you. We've partnered with the Stew Pot. This is a 24-year strong partnership where we connect with the Stew Pot. It's a downtown homeless shelter. It's located about a block away from the library, so it's a natural partnership because it's so close proximity-wise. And every year, this is our highest attended exhibition. The receptions are great. All the money that the artists make, they keep. It doesn't get kicked back anywhere else. And with this, we've been able to really connect with our homeless population and really create a rapport with them because we see them all the time. And then they come in and they have these amazing shows, and it blows your mind. Can't believe it. I have a lot of a certain artist's art in my house, and my husband keeps telling me, stop it. But they're amazing pieces, and this is one of our favorite and just most meaningful partnerships that the library has.
The DMA has a fairly new director. He's been Dr. Augustine Arteaga, and he's been there about 2 years. And he has a great emphasis on working with the community. And so they started a Department of Community Programs. Before that, it was one person maybe being able to do the community programs as part of their job, or they were only doing that and not as well connected with the rest of the staff. So right now, they're doing a lot of new programs. And one of them is a great partnership. We need audiences for our art, and audiences need places to go, right? So in this particular case, though, the DPL has established adult English language learning classes, and so we provide transportation for certain classes at certain branches that we're working with. I think they started with 2 branches, and now they've expanded it by 3 more. They've since added 3 additional branches, and so we provide transportation for the classes to come to the museum, then with their instructor, they work with the instructor and work with the DMA staff, and then they go out into the galleries to practice particular vocabulary lessons. And so it gives them, you know, it's a nice place to go, they get a lot of attention, they have something to talk about and make it real, and, you know, just a lot of practice for the language. So it's a wonderful situation for us because it's a very meaningful program.
Dallas Contemporary is a modern gallery in Dallas, and we have partnered with them to offer a satellite library for their quarterly exhibitions. And so we literally curate a small collection of material that supports the current exhibition. And as you can see, we got people out there reading. It's been really, really popular. We thought maybe people would flip through the books and, you know, think it was cool, but they get really engaged. And I think one of the reasons why is because we have, they're hard to see, but we have some white bookmarks that we have strategically placed in the books to help guide that self-directed learning. And so people aren't just like looking at a book with nowhere to go. They have some direction, and that leads to other other inspirations to keep reading and learning. So this has been a surprisingly well partnership.
And these are 2 other programs that, again, our new Department of Community Programs are trying out. There's a new cultural plan in Dallas. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the city has come together and decided that there are certain things that they want to do to enhance and expand how culture is interpreted and carried out in the city. And so community programs were added to the Education Department just in the fall of 2018. So those other programs along with these have just been in place for a very short period of time. Among the programs are multi-session after-school partnerships, such as those illustrated here. One pilot conducts after-school programs at Hart House, which is an institution that works with refugee children after school and during the summer months. In the past, the DMA has offered art making during the summer months, but now that has been extended to providing after-school programming in the fall. This partnership has been extended through the spring of 2019 and now takes place in their new location at a community center in Vickery Meadow, which is a North Dallas neighborhood. In the example illustrated, the children are making foam plate prints, and that went along with an exhibition that was up at the time. And their activity complements a curriculum to help with social and emotional adjustment in their new homes. Another partnership pilot took place in the fall with I Have a Dream Foundation in Dallas to conduct art sessions for the students led by local artists, and these programs do have budgets. In this case, Vicki Meek, who's a well-known artist who worked in Dallas for many years, here she's talking about an object from the DMA collection by artist Jean Lacey, and the activity centered on creating a collage and writing a poem by taking inspiration from their community. Jean Lacey takes inspiration from her community. And they had 3 sessions with this artist. We're going to be running out of time, so I'm going to go very quickly here. I just wanted to mention this because even though you come up with a partnership proposal and it doesn't happen, that doesn't mean it was a bad proposal. So in this case, a university this Henri Barche was a sculptor. He taught at the university. The DMA Archives has his archives, and the university has artwork by him. And they wanted to put up an exhibition and have it be part of a class where the college-age students, college-age students were going to be in charge of it. So they had to learn how to select the objects, create a checklist, speak to the designers, et cetera, et cetera. And the university applied for a grant to help fund the exhibition, mainly, and then work with the DMA staff as professionals to advise the students, and they would come to the museum and get lectures, and we would go there and help them with their project or their exhibition. The grant did not get funded. We're still hoping the exhibition somehow takes place, but I think it's a really good idea, and now that the idea is planted with our staff, you know, it still may happen, whether it's with this institution or another one.
So policies. This bottom picture of a giant shoe is currently on display at Selfie Nation. Same guy who brought in his amplified band. He didn't tell us how large his pieces were going to be, even though that was part of our policy. Send us pictures, dimensions, that kind of thing. He went a little rogue, and it took him a full week working, gosh, I think 5 hours a day to bring in these massive objects. This was a problem because, as I mentioned, we have to work with different departments. We can't just let people come in and use the lift whenever they want. It takes some planning, coordinating with delivery services, all that kind of thing. So he would often come to the library unannounced with like giant pieces like this shoe, and just wheel it by, and we're like, oh, okay, that's happening. So it was his exhibit is really good, but he definitely went off map there with our policies and procedures.
This is a photograph of the Dallas Historical Society. This is the Hall of State. Our archives is located on the left side of the building in the basement. Our administrative offices are on the right side in the basement. And what's in the middle, as you can see, is the Hall of State that we talked about earlier. And the regions are divided up on the top floors at the top. Right now we are temporary housing our 3D collection in the right side. It's quite large, but we're hoping to get that moved on. And I just kind of wanted you to see what the building was and what we were working with. We started collecting in 1922 with no well, we had an archivist, but there was no real policy about what we were going to collect and how we were going to collect it, so we ended up with entire houses full of stuff. We've even tried to deaccession a little bit and found eyelashes and beauty marks and stuff like that, underwear, baby shoes, and so this is why it's important to implement a policy.
When you say beauty marks, do you mean like a mole, literally?
Yeah, like a Marilyn Monroe thing. Yeah, there was a package on them. This is a loan policy.